I was sitting in that courtroom, hands locked in my lap, heart pounding like a drum in my throat, when Trent stood up. He adjusted his tie like he was on a job interview, not fighting for custody of our daughter. He didn't even look at me. He looked straight at the judge and said, "Your Honor, she's unfit." Even her own family abandoned her. His lawyer, Mr. Calhoun, nodded like it was fact, like they'd rehearsed it over coffee that morning. I sat there, too stunned to move. My stomach twisted. I felt every eye in the courtroom press against my skin like hot irons. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. Unfit. Abandoned. It wasn't just a lie, it was a weapon, and he swung it like he always did. Calm, controlled, and calculated. I wanted to speak. I wanted to scream that he was the reason I'd lost touch with my family, that he spent years slowly convincing me I was the problem, that my mother stopped calling after he told her I was too emotional and manipulative, that I had been isolated, not because I was unstable, but because he made it that way. But the words wouldn't come. I looked at my daughter, Mira, 8 years old, sitting beside me in the too big wooden chair, legs swinging above the floor. She clutched her little purple backpack like it was the only safe thing in the room. Her hair was in braids. She picked at the rubber strap on her watch, the way she always did when she was nervous. And when Trent said those words, when he twisted the truth like he always had, she turned and looked up at me. Her eyes were so calm. She didn't look scared. She looked steady. And then, without asking, without hesitating, she stood up. She stood up in that silent courtroom like she had every right to speak, even if she was the youngest one there. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her little unicorn journal, the one I thought she only used to draw hearts and scribble down math problems. "Your Honor," she said, her voice small but clear, "I'd like to read from my notebook." The room went so still, I swear I could hear the clock ticking above the judge's head. Judge Whitmore leaned forward, eyebrows raised. "Go ahead," he said gently. Mira looked straight at Trent. Then she looked at me. She opened the journal, and then she started to read. She read what she'd written about the nights her father slammed the kitchen cabinets when he thought no one was listening, about the time he yelled at our dog and kicked her so hard she limped for 3 days, about the times he told her not to tell me things like how much he drank or how he called me names when I wasn't home. Every word came from her mouth like it had been waiting to be heard. She didn't stutter. She didn't pause. She told the truth. And by the time she finished, even Judge Whitmore looked shaken. That was the moment everything changed. Not when Trent lied, not when his lawyer nodded, but when an 8-year-old girl, my daughter, stood up, looked the court in the eye, and told the truth that no one else had dared to say out loud. People think leaving is the hard part. It isn't. It's what comes after. The silence, the guilt, the second guessing. That's the part no one warns you about. When I left Trent, I had nothing. No money, no job, no support. I packed 2 bags and carried Mira out of the house in the middle of the night. She was still wearing her pajamas. I didn't even stop to grab her favorite stuffed bunny. I just needed to get her out. I told her we were going on an adventure. She believed me. We ended up in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of Raleigh. It was nothing fancy. The walls were thin, the carpet was worn, and the heating clicked loudly every time it turned on. But it was ours. It was quiet. No yelling. No smashed plates. No doors slammed hard enough to shake the windows. I was 35 years old and starting over with an 8-year-old and 2 laundry baskets of clothes. The first week was the hardest. Mira kept asking when we were going back. She missed her room, she missed the dog, she missed her dad. I didn't blame her. Children don't see manipulation. They don't recognize emotional abuse. They see the parent who read bedtime stories, not the man who weaponized silence. I tried to keep it normal. I cooked spaghetti on the stove with a borrowed pot. I taped her drawings to the fridge. I tucked her in every night with a flashlight under the covers because she was scared of the new shadows on our ceiling. I went to bed every night feeling like a failure, but I smiled for her. I had to. People on the outside didn't understand. They never do. When Trent called my mother to tell her I'd left him, she believed him. He told her I'd had a breakdown, that I was unstable and paranoid, that I was dragging Mira through unnecessary chaos. And because I had cried to her so many times before and always gone back, this time she didn't believe me. She stopped calling. stopped answering. I felt like I'd lost her, too. That's what Trent did best. He didn't just isolate me, he made me look like the unstable one. There were days I questioned myself. I'd walk Mira to school and wonder if maybe I had overreacted. Maybe he wasn't that bad. Maybe Mira needed her father. But then I'd remember the way her body stiffened every time his truck pulled into the driveway, the way she flinched when he raised his voice, the way she once told me without looking up from her coloring book that she liked when Daddy went away for work because the house gets softer. That was the word she used, softer. I had started going to therapy quietly. I couldn't afford much, but I needed someone to help me stay steady. I started documenting everything, every interaction, every message, every time Trent was late picking her up or sent back her lunchbox untouched. My lawyer told me I needed to build a case, but the truth was I was building a shield, not just for the court, for myself, to remind me that I wasn't crazy. Then the court date arrived. I dropped Mira off at school that morning and sat in the parking lot for 30 minutes just breathing. I stared out the windshield and thought about everything I'd done to survive, not just leaving, but staying sane, keeping Mira whole, keeping her from turning into a shadow of herself. When I picked her up that afternoon, she climbed into the car and handed me a drawing she'd made in class. It was 2 stick figures holding hands under a tree. She had labeled them Mommy and Me. I asked her what the tree was for, and she said, "That's where we're going when it's all done, somewhere with trees and no shouting." I smiled and said, "That sounds perfect." But inside, I was terrified. I had to face Trent in court the next day. I had to sit in front of a judge and convince the system that I wasn't broken, that I was capable, that Mira was safe with me. And I knew what Trent was going to do. He'd charm them. He'd lie with a straight face. He always did. He was so good at it. Even I believed him sometimes. But I didn't know then that Mira had been watching, that she'd been writing, that she'd seen more than I ever imagined. And she was about to prove that even an 8-year-old could tell the truth louder than any man in a suit ever could. The courthouse smelled like cold tile and nervous sweat. I sat on the bench outside the hearing room with Mira next to me, swinging her legs and humming softly to herself. She was coloring in a book I'd packed in her bag, the same one she always brought to calm herself at the doctor's office. I kept checking the time. My palms were slick. My stomach wouldn't settle. When they finally called our names, I stood up too fast and nearly lost my balance. Mira grabbed my hand. Her grip was steady, small fingers wrapped around mine like she was grounding me instead of the other way around. I squeezed back. I told her everything would be okay. I wasn't sure if I believed it. Inside the courtroom, it felt like a play. Trent sat on the opposite side in a navy suit I hadn't seen before, flanked by his lawyer, Mr. Calhoun. They both looked so polished, so calm. Trent even smiled as if we were all here for something routine. He nodded to the judge like they were old friends. He didn't look at me. Not once. My lawyer leaned over and whispered, "Stay composed. They're going to try to push you emotionally." That didn't surprise me. Trent was always 5 steps ahead when it came to appearances. He knew how to sound reasonable even when he was saying something cruel. He made his abuse look like concern. His cruelty wore a smile. They started with him. Trent talked about my mental health, about the time I went to therapy, about how I once missed Mira's parent-teacher conference because I was working 2 jobs and my car broke down. He framed it all as neglect. He painted himself as the stable one, the father who had a yard, a dog, and a steady paycheck. He told the court he was worried about Mira's emotional well-being in an unstable environment. Then came the words I knew were coming. "Her own family won't speak to her," he said, voice calm and even. "Even her mother cut ties. That should tell you everything. She's unfit." His lawyer nodded as if it was an open and shut case. They had rehearsed this. They were playing their roles perfectly. I felt heat rise in my chest. I gripped the edge of my seat. I wanted to speak, to shout that none of this was true, but my voice stayed locked behind everything I had buried for years. I glanced at Mira. She was still. Her backpack was in her lap, the zipper slightly open. My lawyer asked for a recess so I could gather myself before testifying. The judge agreed. In the hallway, I tried to breathe, but it came out shaky. I knelt in front of Mira and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "You doing okay?" I asked. She nodded. "Are you?" "I'm trying," I said, "but it's hard." She looked at me for a long moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out her journal. The unicorn one, the one I thought she only used for doodles and spelling lists. I wrote stuff, she said, in case they didn't believe you. I looked at her, stunned. What kind of stuff? She shrugged like it was no big deal. Things I remember about Daddy from when he gets mad. I didn't know what to say. I stared at that little book in her hands and felt my heart crack open. All this time, I thought I'd been hiding the worst from her. I thought I'd protected her from the weight of it, but she had seen it all. Back inside, the judge asked if I wanted to respond to Trent's claims. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat again. Then Mira stood up. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't hesitate. She just stood, holding her journal, and said, "Your Honor, I have something I want to read." Everyone turned. The judge looked surprised, but he didn't stop her. "All right," he said. "Go ahead, Mira." She opened the journal with both hands, took a breath, and began to speak. I didn't know what was written on those pages. I didn't know what she was about to share, but I felt the room shift. The air felt heavier, and I knew, deep down, this was no longer about what Trent said or what I failed to. It was about what our daughter had lived through, and she was about to make them all see it. Mira stood at the center of the courtroom, her little hands gripping her journal like it was armor. Her braids fell over her shoulders and her backpack hung off one arm. Her voice was steady, soft but clear. "The first part is from October," she began. "That's when Daddy said I was getting too close to Mommy. He told me I should always pick him, no matter what. But I didn't want to pick. I wanted both." No one moved. She flipped to another page. "This one's from when he made me throw away my drawings for Mommy's birthday. He said she didn't deserve anything nice, and that she'd probably forget my birthday anyway. But she didn't. She never has." I sat frozen in my chair, my mouth half open, unsure whether to cry or pull her into my arms. I had no idea she remembered those moments with such detail. I had tried so hard to shield her, to keep my pain from seeping into her world. But it had reached her anyway. She continued reading, turning each page like it mattered, like every word had weight. One time he got mad when I spilled juice on the couch. He made me sit in the dark closet for a long time and told me not to tell Mommy. I was scared, but I didn't cry. He said crying was for weak people. Mr. Calhoun shifted in his seat. Trent crossed his arms, his jaw flexed. The judge held up a hand, stopping anyone from interrupting. "Let her finish," he said. Mira turned to the last page. "This is the most important one," she said. "Last month, Daddy said that Mommy only left because she's crazy. But I saw Mommy cry in the bathroom when she thought I was asleep, and I don't think that's crazy. I think that's brave. Because she still made my lunch and helped with my math homework and never yelled, even when she was tired." She looked around the room, then locked eyes with the judge. "I feel safe with Mommy," she said, "and I want to stay with her." My hand went to my chest. I hadn't even realized I'd been holding my breath until that moment. There were tears in my eyes, but I blinked them back, watching my daughter stand in a courtroom filled with adults, speaking her truth like she'd done it 100 times. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. "Mira," he said gently, "did anyone tell you to write this or ask you to read it?" She shook her head. "Number one, I just wanted someone to know, just in case." The judge looked at her for a long moment before nodding. "Thank you. You can take your seat." She walked back to me quietly, slipped into her chair, and leaned into my side. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and held her close, unsure if I was comforting her or myself. Trent's lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, with respect, I believe this is emotionally compelling, but hardly objective." Judge Whitmore looked directly at him. "Mr. Calhoun, I've sat on this bench for 24 years. I've heard every excuse, every rehearsed statement, every parent who claims the other one is unfit. This isn't a tactic. This is a child telling the truth about her experience, and I will take it seriously." Trent leaned toward his lawyer, whispering something sharp and angry, but neither of them could undo what had just happened. This wasn't part of my plan. Mira standing up on her own, using her voice in a room full of people she didn't know. That wasn't something I had prepared her for. I had only wanted to protect her. I thought my role was to shield her from every part of this ugly fight. But she didn't need shielding. She needed to be heard. In that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. I wasn't just defending my ability to raise her, I was defending her right to be safe, to be seen, to grow up without fear. And she had just shown the judge exactly what kind of mother I was, without me saying a word. That was the moment the case shifted, not because of strategy, not because of legal skill, but because an 8-year-old girl stood up, told the truth, and reminded everyone in that room what this fight was really about. The courtroom was silent after Mira sat down. Her words lingered in the air like smoke. Sharp, honest, impossible to ignore. I could feel it in the way people shifted in their seats, the way the judge's pen stopped moving, the way Trent suddenly avoided looking in my direction. Something had changed. Judge Whitmore took a moment before speaking. He adjusted his glasses and looked down at his notes. Then he looked at me. "Ms. Rains," he said, "do you have anything you'd like to say before I make a temporary ruling?" I stood slowly. My knees felt unsteady, but my voice didn't shake. "I didn't know she was going to do that," I said, motioning gently toward Mira. "I didn't ask her to write anything. I didn't even know she kept a journal. I tried to protect her from all of this. I wanted to be the kind of mother who shielded her from the chaos, but I couldn't hide the truth from her, no matter how hard I tried." I looked at Mira. She was leaning against the chair's wooden arm, flipping through the edge of her notebook, calm and focused, like she had just read a poem in class. I turned back to the judge. "She's not just my daughter," I said. "She's my reason for staying strong when I wanted to give up. She watched me survive something that should have broken me, and she's still standing tall after everything." Judge Whitmore gave a small nod, then turned to Trent. "Mr. Rains, would you like to respond?" Trent stood. His expression was tight. He glanced at the judge, then at Mira, and finally at me. I had seen that look before, when he realized he was losing control. "With all due respect, Your Honor," he said, "this is getting emotional. Children don't always understand what they see. Maya," he gestured to Mira, but used the wrong name, "she's just a kid. I'm sure her mother helped shape that story." Mira's head snapped up. "My name is Mira," she said, not loudly, but firmly. The judge raised a hand to silence the room again. "That will be enough, Mr. Rains." Trent clenched his jaw but didn't speak. Judge Whitmore took a breath. "I've reviewed the documents, heard the statements, and now I've listened to something that, quite honestly, carries more weight than anything I've heard today. Children don't always know how to lie convincingly. Adults do. When a child speaks with that kind of detail and conviction, it deserves to be taken seriously." He paused, then looked at the clerk. "I am awarding temporary full custody to Ms. Rains, effective immediately. Mr. Rains, any visitation will be supervised until further investigation is completed. I'm also ordering a full psychological evaluation and home review before this court makes any permanent rulings." My heart dropped. Not from fear, from release. The pressure that had been building for over a year lifted off my chest like someone had finally opened a door that had been locked from the inside. Mira looked up at me with wide eyes. "Does that mean we can go home now?" I nodded, trying not to cry in front of the room. "Yes, baby, we can." As I gathered our things, I noticed Trent frozen in place, whispering angrily to his lawyer. I didn't care what he said, not anymore. For the first time in years, his words didn't touch me. Outside the courtroom, the late afternoon sun hit our faces as we walked down the steps. I didn't realize my mother was standing at the bottom until I heard her voice. "Celia." I turned. She looked older than I remembered, her face tight with guilt. She stepped forward slowly. "I came today," she said. "I watched from the back. I didn't know. I didn't want to believe it, but I do now. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." I looked at her, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to say she had no right, but Mira stepped forward and hugged her around the waist. I let that be the answer for now. That night, at home, I tucked Mira into bed. She curled up under her blanket, holding the journal tight to her chest like a stuffed animal. "You were brave today," I said. She looked at me, eyes sleepy but bright. "You were brave first." The lights went out. The house was quiet. For once, the quiet felt safe. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window like a quiet promise. Mira was still asleep, curled on her side with her journal on the nightstand. I sat beside her and just watched her breathe. There was something about that moment, simple, still, sacred, that made everything we had just been through feel real. It was over, at least for now. No more court dates on the calendar. No more waking up with that knot in my stomach, wondering what version of me Trent was going to present to the world next. The court had ordered a formal investigation into his behavior. I had full custody while that played out, and Mira was safe. That was what mattered. When she woke up, she rubbed her eyes and whispered, "Is today a normal day?" I nodded. "Yes, baby, today is a normal day." We got pancakes. We danced in the kitchen to an old radio station. I let her pick out a new backpack at the store and told her she could decorate it however she wanted. She picked dinosaur stickers and tiny glitter stars. She said it felt brave. Later that week, we went to the park. She ran across the grass in her mismatched socks, arms out like wings, and laughed from somewhere deep in her chest. A real laugh, not polite or careful. I hadn't heard that sound in a long time. I sat on the bench and just watched her. The sun hit her face and made her squint as she smiled. And in that moment, something inside me finally relaxed. Not just relief, not just pride. Something stronger. Something that felt like peace. My mother called that afternoon. She didn't try to explain everything. She just said, "I want to rebuild, if you'll let me. I want to start showing up the way I should have before." I told her I wasn't ready to forget, but I was open to forgiving. She said that was enough, that she would wait. For the first time in a long time, I believed her. People ask me now what it took to leave Trent, what finally pushed me. They think it must have been something big, a violent outburst, a single unforgivable moment. But it wasn't. It was smaller than that. It was the day I looked at Mira sitting in the hallway with her hands over her ears and realized she was shrinking, that the light behind her eyes was dimming, that if I didn't leave, she would grow up thinking that silence and fear were normal, that yelling was love, that hiding her feelings was the only way to survive. So I left. Not because I was strong, but because I couldn't stand to see her become someone she was never meant to be. And in the end, it was her who gave me strength. She stood in a courtroom and told the truth no one else would say. She didn't do it with anger. She didn't do it to hurt anyone. She did it because she believed that telling the truth mattered. And that belief changed everything. Sometimes people think children are too young to understand what's happening around them. They think kids can't sense tension, manipulation, or pain. But Mira knew. She knew more than I realized. And she loved me through it anyway. That's the part I carry with me now. I'm not broken. I'm not unfit. I'm a mother who fought back. A woman who rebuilt from the ground up. And I did it with the help of an 8-year-old girl who never stopped paying attention. We still keep her journal. It's in the drawer beside her bed. She says she wants to keep writing in it, but not about sad things anymore. Now she writes about trees, dreams, and things she's learning in school. She says it's her truth book. Every night when I tuck her in, I ask her the same question. Do you feel safe? And every night she answers the same way. With you, yes. That's what I fought for. Not revenge, not victory, just that answer. And I'll fight for it every day for the rest of my life. If this story moved you, even just a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. Your words matter more than you know. If you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or underestimated, you're not alone. And if you want to hear more real stories about strength, survival, and truth-telling in the face of silence, subscribe to the channel. We're building something honest here, one story at a time. Thank you for watching.